Do I have enough money to retire on? That is the $1 million question, so to speak. It is a question that I have lost many a night's sleep over. Is there enough? Am I spending too much? Welcome to my channel, by the way. My name is Skip, and we're here trying to figure out how to make our last years the best years of our lives. Maybe you're one of those kind of people that have more money than you know what to do with, and you know that your money is going to outlast you. Well, then you probably don't need this episode. But I think for most of us, this is a legitimate question. Do I have enough? How much can I spend? But in order to answer that question, there's a few questions before it, a few things we need to talk about before we get to that. Here's the first thing. And we've talked about this before, but I want to dig into it a little bit more. What is the most important things in your life in retirement? What do you want your retirement to look like? If you just dreamt about that, what is really important to you? And I don't think this is just a question that's easy to answer. I think that it's a project that we need to work on. And if you come into retirement with a partner or a spouse, then it's a project you need to work on together. What are the 2 or 3 things that are most important? Sit and have conversation, make lists, debate, argue if you must. But eventually, come up with those 2 or 3 things and get on the same page with your spouse or your partner. And that's why I say this is a project, because sometimes it takes time to figure this out. And by the way, don't let money into the conversation at this point. Don't say, oh, well, this is what's important to me, but we don't have any money. We can't afford that. Don't do that yet. Just talk about what's important. It doesn't have to fit anyone else's expectations. There's no real right or wrong. It just has to be yours, and it just has to be real. Maybe one way to approach this would be to ask yourself this question. If I had 10 years left, if I knew I was going to die 10 years from now, then what would be important? How would I want to live out those 10 years? The other day, we were watching the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics. And they were talking about the next Olympics, and they were talking about the Olympics after that, which happens to be in Utah. And I thought, man, I love Utah. How cool would it be? Talk about a bucket list thing, right? How cool would it be to get out to the Winter Olympics in Utah? And they were saying it's like 8 years away. And then I did the math and I said, wait a minute. When this comes to Utah, I'm going to be 80 years old. Am I still going to be able to travel in 80 years? Am I still going to want to travel when I'm 80 years old? How many healthy years do I actually have? And so maybe another way to ask that question is, how do I want to live these healthy years? Maybe there's 5, maybe there's 10. At 72, that puts me at 82. I don't know. But what is important in these years? And the last thing I would say about that is this. This is not something that you can just make up. This is something that needs to be discovered. I think it is within you. I think it's always been within you. But sometimes it's just a matter of discovering it. Then the next question we have to ask ourselves is, how much money do I need every month? How much will it take to live this out on a monthly basis or maybe a yearly basis, however that works best for you? Excuse the helicopter going over. You can probably hear that. The other day I was I was in Reddit and I was looking at some forums about retirement. And somebody asked the question, do you budget in retirement? And I was shocked at how many people not only didn't budget, but they didn't even have a clue how much money they were spending. And that's fine if people want to live like that, but I want to sleep. I don't want to be worried about those things. And so there are two things that I always want to know. How much can we spend? Are we spending too much? Are we spending enough, right? And then will we have enough at the end of the day? Man, I need to do my best to figure those things out. There's a word I learned the other day. It's parsimonious. Never heard of it before. Parsimonious is the fear of spending too much. Maybe not the fear as much as just the unwillingness to spend money. Sheila and I, like many of you, lived most of our lives on the cheap, right? We did everything as cheaply as we possibly could, parsimonious. We never took lavish vacations. We didn't have fancy cars. And I was reading the other day that apparently many retirees could actually spend more money in retirement than they are, but they're parsimonious. They don't take that bucket list trip that they've always dreamt of because they're afraid they won't have enough. And man, this is so hard in retirement, so hard to figure out because there's so little coming in and everything is like going out. And so if it keeps going out, how long will it last? In my working days, I didn't give much thought to spending. I just spent as little as possible. Sheila did the books. I know I drove her crazy, but we just spent as little as we possibly could. But as we got closer to retirement, I started to get more serious at looking at the budget and looking what we're spending. So that takes me back to the question, how much will it cost us every month to live? Now, if you're nearing retirement, I don't know if you can hear that. There's a boat that comes by on the river, and it's like a booze cruise, and they just started back today. So there they are. And in the summer, they really party, let me tell you. Anyway, back to this question. If you are like nearing retirement, you're not retired yet, this is going to be a bit of a guess. I get it. But you want to make the best guess you possibly can. So you can start by saying, what expenses won't I have that I have now once I retire? Maybe there's like some loans that you're going to pay off before you actually retire, so you won't have that expense. Or maybe you decide, well, we won't need 2 cars anymore, so we'll lose that expense. Or maybe you have some expenses that are tied to your work and you won't have those. Experts say you need about 70 or 80%. If you want the same kind of comfort in living, it's about 70, 80% of what you earn when you're making money. Now, if you're already retired, it's a little bit easier because you can just say, what are we actually spending? How much is it costing us to live? Sheila and I keep a detailed budget. We have for quite a few years now. We do that in Quicken. Like I say, Sheila handles all the books, but every year, beginning of the year, we sit down and we work out a budget. And there is actually 2 budgets. There's a budget on what we have to spend, and there's a budget on what we would like to spend. And those are 2 very different things. There are certain expenses we have to pay, right? But then there's some other things, bucket list trips and things like that we would like to spend. And I think I'll talk about more of this in another episode, but I think that those 2 numbers in our heads are really, really helpful to have. But once you know what you're going to need from month to month, then you have to figure out one more thing. You got to figure out when you're going to die. Wouldn't it be nice if we knew the exact date? Because then it'd be easy to figure all this out, right? What's our life expectancy? My dad died at 72. My mom's still alive at 99. Sheila's parents both lived well into their 90s. So, what does that mean? I don't know. I saw the other day that the life expectancy of men in the USA has gone up from 75 and a half to 79 years now. In Europe, it's a little bit higher than that. In Africa, it's a little bit lower than that. So all we can do when it comes to this is take our best guess, just put a number on it. What number do you want to put? That's up to you. So let me review. We figure out what's important. We figure out what we're going to spend each month. We have a date for our demise. And then once we've done all that, it's just about doing the math. But to be honest, all those first parts, that's the relatively easy part, at least for me. It's this math part. This is the part that keeps me awake at night. Because you're dealing with inflation and with interest rates and with compound interest and 401ks, and you got taxes thrown into the loop and all kinds of stuff we're trying to figure out. Well, I want to talk to you about how we've come to terms with that and how I'm sleeping better. But for right now, I've gone on too long. So the next video I will upload, I will talk about our process in doing the math and figuring out what we think we can spend each month and still make it to the end. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. If you know someone that this might help, please send it off to them. And I'll be back hopefully this week, by next Sunday at the very latest, with the next part in this. So until then, cheers.